is early December. It is time to start making some bold and sure-footed Oscar predictions as best we can. Chris Beachum, managing editor at Gold Derby. Paul Sheehan, our executive editor. I'm Tom O'Neill, and we're going to start with the Best Actor race. Chris Beachum, who's going to win?
Well, every year at the Oscars, by the time we get there, there's always at least 2 acting categories that we pretty much, they're in stone, based on Globes and SAG and Critics' Choice and all that, and I think this is going to be one of them. Leo DiCaprio is going to finally, after a couple of decades, win his first Oscar.
Paul, you agree?
Probably, but not assuredly. I think there's a couple of men that might have a problem with that early pronouncement. Yes, I think he's lost 4 times on the acting side, once for producing Wolf of Wall Street, so there is the sense that he's overdue. But there's also, I think of Peter O'Toole, I think of Richard Burton. There are a lot of fellows that were overdue that never won Oscars. And I don't know, there's something, people are going to laugh when I say his name, but Matt Damon in The Martian, I mean, he's the center of that film. He made it into the massive hit that it is. In our other video, we talked about Ridley Scott probably winning Best Director. It may not win Best Picture, but I just don't underestimate Matt Damon. He's got that likability factor that Leo maybe doesn't have.
And he's probably going to win the Globe, Matt Damon.
Absolutely. He's
in that musical comedy category.
That's right.
That's, of course, is your Oscar audition over there. You do well there, and you could win the Oscar next, right, Chris? We've seen that many times happen.
That's right, but we could. It should be just like last year, in my opinion, where you had Keaton and Redmayne win at the Globes in the comedy and drama categories, which helped us out not a bit because we knew the Oscar was going to one of them. I think DiCaprio and Matt Damon could both win at the Globes, drama, comedy, and that will, they'll both do well on stage, and then that won't help us in terms of that prediction. But I don't know. I mean, you talk about Matt Damon and this sort of a one-man performance that he gives for big chunks. And I think of somebody like Tom Hanks, who does that in Castaway, didn't win the Oscar. Sandra Bullock, Gravity, didn't win the Oscar. So I don't know that that's a surefire ticket to winning.
Well, but in both instances, Tom Hanks had had 2 just a few years prior, and Sandra Bullock had been only a couple of years away from winning for The Blind Side. So
but Leo's won.
Damon's got one on his shelf too, so it's not like he's unrewarded.
Right. Okay, I'm putting it out there as a possibility. I'm being slightly,
But in Leo's case for the Oscar, we need to, point out the other factors, and that is he did uglify himself for this movie. And when we employ our old slap the stud reminder here that matinee stars, when they are chiseled young men, tend not to win because the old geezered men in the Academy, of which 70% are of the demo is comprised of, usually say you can't have this, Buster. You've got everything else. And they wait, till you become, older, or if you uglify yourself like George Clooney did in by getting fat in Syriana or whatever. But anyway, Leo does that here. He just takes over the screen. It's the biggest performance in terms of screen impact and size of the year. Eddie Redmayne gives a bigger performance in terms of costumes and embodying another person. Leo doesn't quite do that. It's kind of loosely based on a real life story, but it's just, I think there's this feeling in town that it's time, in the same way that you could feel that energy and engine behind McConaughey the year of Dallas Buyers Club. You kind of feel that same thing for Leo now.
Well, Tom, even though he's on a revenge track the whole movie for something that happens near the beginning, you root for him. I mean, you're like pulling for him to get to his mission and get to the climax of the movie. So I think all of those things together. Peter O'Toole the last couple of times, everything didn't kind of gel together. It wasn't the right part. There were other people really, really strong in the category. I know there's some strong contenders here, but I don't know that any of them have all of the elements like Leo.
Right. I think Fassbender gives the best performance of the year, but you're not rooting for Steve Jobs. He is a Class A prick, and that's the problem, and that's why I think many people have turned against the movie, is the unlikability of its subject.
But what
One thing I'll say about Fassbender, I'm sorry, Paul, but he's not going to campaign, so that's not going to help at all. He's already said that. But I think there might be a critics group or two, maybe a major one, that will reward him for both Macbeth and Steve Jobs. You know how they'll combine them together at some of the critics groups. that could help him a little bit.
But what about on the campaign aspect of it? You know, the perception that, as somebody was saying to me, Oscar voter of a certain age, oh, that Leo, he's always in the discotheques. You know,
the Academy member, by the way, who said this to me.
Yeah, and he does, you know, and he's got interchangeable, pretty young things on his arm. So that I think of, I referenced Richard Burton, you know, the tempestuous personal life overshadowing their acting. You know, I just wonder if it's sort of that he's
not in the Richard Burton league.
Oh, no, okay, I'm just
a barroom brawler. Leo's not.
Well, another nice aspect of his career, we just went, Zach Laws and I just went to an event about a month ago for the SAG Foundation, which is their charitable group with SAG, and they rewarded 3 people that weren't actors, all, you know, producer, right? But their big award of the night was for Leo at age 40, called the SAG Inspiration Award, for all of his charitable work and all of his environmental work and those sorts of things. So I think that's going to outweigh any of the personal stuff as well.
Okay, I'm just passing along information.
Speaking of
if
campaigning,
he does not win the Globe, which he's won 2 or 3 times now, I don't remember how many times, I may reconsider my position. If The Revenant doesn't get into Best Picture, I may reconsider my position. But I think I could just envision him walking up those steps over and over and over again over the next couple of months.
Johnny Depp is campaigning. He normally does not. He's been at every event. He's sitting for the press. He's smiling, and he's being a real trooper here. It's a real-life person. He plays a sneering devil. That's all cool, but he's not a devil you root for, and I think that's the problem here, is that when you get the winking devils, you're kind of like in the supporting category, Javier Bardem, let's say, or Christoph Waltz. You're cheering them on. You know, Whitey Bulger is. I think that's.
Well, I think that's the difference, say, between him and Hannibal Lecter in Best Actor, in that it's a fictional character versus a real life person. We're watching Whitey Bulger killing people as he did in real life. So it's a very, very well-made movie, but the problem with it is it's about a very distasteful person. I mean, this evil person. I mean, who takes pleasure in killing, and in a way, with Hannibal, you were sort of talk about the rooting factor. You know, you're not rooting for Whitey Bulger in any way, shape, or form, other than for him to get caught.
Right.
I love
you're rooting for Will Smith.
I think it's one of his best ever. I would love to see. I think the nomination will be a victory for him. The movie wasn't nearly as well received as I thought it would be.
Right. Will Smith is campaigning, and he's playing a real-life inspired person in Concussion. He takes on a voice. In other words, he's embodying another personality, which is often important. You can't just keep playing yourself or characters that look like yourself. They want to see some measure of difficulty that you tackle, and Concussion is not registering that strong. It's a well-made movie, but sports movies tend not to do well in general at the box office or at the Oscars. There are many exceptions, of course, like Moneyball being one, The Fighter being another. But Rocky, for that matter, of course, and Creed will surpass that.
Well, and I think that's what I think we're underestimating both Will Smith and the movie. It doesn't come out till Christmas. I mean, it's so timely. You know, the news of Frank Gifford, when his family released the results of his autopsy, that he suffered from this disease that Will Smith's character in Concussion discovers, fights against the system to do the autopsy on a Pittsburgh Steeler who dies far too young, fights against the NFL. And Will Smith, I was at an event and an Oscar voter stood up and said to him, you know, for the first 5 minutes I was thinking of it was Will Smith on the screen, but after that I forgot. I mean, he nails this performance. You know, they tape back his ears. He adopts that Nigerian accent. It's a really well-made movie, and he's right at the center of it. And I think that's going to be a big hit just when the Oscar voters get their ballots online right after Christmas.
Good point. Very good point.
He's a very, very charming person as well at
Yes.
parties and events and such. I think that'll help. And like we mentioned on our Best Picture Slugfest, you know, about Spotlight and the journalist going out and campaigning for the movie, this doctor that he plays is fully in support of him and out on the campaign trail with him. So I think that those kind of things can help.
And Will Smith, two-time Oscar nominee, both for playing real-life people in Ali and The Pursuit of Happiness. So I think that he could do it. But I put Michael B. Jordan in my predictions for Creed. I just think, again, as we talked about over in the Best Picture race, I think that film is going to have legs, and he could get nominated, could ride a wave of support for it.
He could. He is absolutely terrific in the film and believable and appealing. And, of course, he's now a serious film actor with Fruitvale Station behind him and all that. No, that could happen. Your buddy Michael Caine, Chris, you think he's in the hunt here, don't you?
I do. I may have switched him out for somebody else a couple of days ago. As we look at the main people, they're all, in that younger sort of bracket, not 20s, but, Leo and Michael Fassbender and Eddie Redmayne and even Johnny Depp, who's just past 50, Matt Damon. I kind of feel like they're going to put somebody in from the older group, a Michael Caine or a Ian McKellen or a Tom Hanks or somebody like that. They generally do, don't they?
Yeah. Right, and Michael Caine, I mean, he's probably worked with everyone in Hollywood. And for all you Oscar nuts, if he does get nominated, he will be the only performer to have been nominated in 6 consecutive decades, starting in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the first decade of this century and now. So that would be quite the achievement for him. He wants it. He's out there. He's working the circuit. He's in his early 80s and proudly declares that. And so there might be the feeling this is the last chance to reward him. He's won 2, but they're for supporting. He makes no bones about it. He would love to win a Best Actor Oscar. And I think people will respond to that in the acting branch. I mean, there's about 1,100 of them. That unabashed, saying it out loud, not being coy. I think that people might respect him for that.
I keep moving Bryan Cranston in and out of my predictions. One day I'm convinced he's going to make it, and then the field is so crowded I think he might get bounced out. But in his favor, as an argument for his inclusion on the list, there's some powerful points. For example, all those Emmys on his shelf, number 1. Number 2, he portrays a hero of Hollywood who Trumbo is about one of the most noble figures in liberal Hollywood history, and he really is a very theatrical person in real life that is portrayed theatrically on screen by Bryan, and I think that's the problem here, is that there's not more widespread kind of universal assumption that he's going to be nominated, because some people think he's too hammy up there. But if you ever watch some YouTube videos of Trumbo, you can see he's imitating a real-life person who was kind of like a bad Shakespearean actor sometimes. Chris, where do you come down on
Cranston? I'm thinking about just forecasting ahead, and we'll know next week for sure. But I sort of get the feeling that he'll get in at SAG, because SAG is way more TV people than film people, and we know how much they've loved him at SAG. So he could ride that maybe to an Oscar nomination, I think. Also, he does a lot of stuff with the foreign press over the years, so they might put him in as well. If he could get a couple of those kind of things and build some momentum, I've got him in right now, but I'm like you are, Tom. I keep changing out those last couple of slots over and over.
Ian McKellen, the other veteran, he is working it. There are events all over town every day for Ian McKellen, aren't there, Chris?
There are.
And it just seems like we've talked. I mean, there's a sliding scale on the Best Picture side, and really they should have just stuck with 10. But boy, we've just named 10 men, all of whom would be credible Best Actor nominees. And when we turn to Best Actress, we'll easily have 10 names there as well. I mean, I know they will never do it, but boy, I mean, it would make our lives a lot easier.
Also, there's actually like 12. We've got Steve Carell is in the race. Right. We've got Tom Hanks, of course. Bridge of Spies is as big as we think it is, and it's going to be huge in terms of nominations, and it's going to make it in there for Best Picture. Yeah, he's not been nominated since Castaway. He wasn't nominated for his last 2 films, including Saving Mr. Banks and Captain Phillips. He was presumed to be nominated for both and was left off. But he's a former officer of the Academy. He's been on the board of directors. He's a 2-time Oscar winner. He gives a magnificent performance in a well-made movie. So he's actually in the running, too. He's down at number 13 now on our list because, well, we've been disappointed in terms of him not getting in the past, but that doesn't mean that's going to happen again.
In fact, it could be the opposite of the rebound and the awareness. Ooh, he didn't get nominated a couple years ago, and I almost wonder if some people didn't put him on their ballots because they thought, well, he's going to get in.
Yeah,
so I'm not
they thought everyone else was going to put him on. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, my gosh, I would have given him the Oscar for Captain Phillips just for the very last scene. I mean, that one scene alone, I would have given him an Oscar. So I'd love to see him get nominated again. And for this, it's a good picture.
Any final thoughts on Best Actor, either of you guys, before we move on to Actress?
But this might as well make it 15. I'll throw in a couple of other names. The little boy from Beasts of No Nations getting a lot of support. Abraham, is it Atta? And the one movie we haven't seen, which is Hateful Eight. We don't know about Samuel L. Jackson. Talk about working with everybody in the industry. If he's strong, he may make a real push here at the end.
Right. We're not seeing it for a couple more days.
Oh.
Well, there are screenings. We're just very busy here at Gold Derby, unfortunately, Quentin. You got to invite us earlier. I did get an invite today for us to interview him on Friday, but before we did this video, I was emailing them back saying we won't have seen the movie. So anyway, they're pushing us to go see it earlier than Friday to do this Quentin thing.
This prognostication stuff ain't easy because over there in Best Actress, I think until you saw Joy, didn't we all think that we knew who was going to win Best Actress this year?
Well, I've had Jennifer Lawrence for a week or two.
Of course.
I don't know now. Paul, you give us your take on all this.
Well, that's right. People have to hunt the video of you and Pete Hammond over at Deadline because he takes you to task in a way that Chris and I couldn't even match.
I hadn't seen it then. I was gushing about it. I think David O. Russell's a genius. I really do, and I think he's come up with the perfect formula, the perfect story here. Enjoy. I have seen the movie. It's extremely well made. I love this movie. I think two problems are it's a little bit too much of a chick flick for those geezer guys in the Academy, and two, I think that she's not giving a transformative performance. You know, that's what they tend to like. They like Helen Mirren becoming Elizabeth. They like Meryl Streep becoming Maggie Thatcher. They want Eddie Redmayne becoming Stephen Hawking, and they like a degree of difficulty. They like transforming the body, like Hilary Swank packing on all the muscle weight for $1 Million Baby, all that kind of thing. And Jennifer Lawrence is giving us Jennifer Lawrence. She's doing a magnificent job. It's a wonderful fireworks performance that is so touching. Yeah, I think it is a perfect movie. It will be nominated for Best Picture. I don't think it can win because of the gender problem. But boy, oh boy, she is magnificent. Chris, you saw it with me. You were bowled over too, weren't you?
Oh yeah, she's really, really good. I'm kind of like you. Look, she's going to win a second Oscar, and it's going to come soon. I just don't know if it's this year. I was one of the only ones saying, coming off of the Globes, when was that, 2 years ago, that she was not going to win, back-to-back Oscars. But now there's been a little bit more time, and I think she's getting close to getting another one. She is the movie. I mean, everybody else is definitely supporting. It's all about Joy, which is her character, and it's a true, basically a true story, a true life lady. And I'm just still in the mindset, as I have been for weeks, that it's going to be Brie Larson. We've just heard her name and the film room's name so often among various voters that I just feel like it's going to be her.
And Tom, when you recounted about the transformative aspect of winners, the other what they like in Best Actress, and we often liken to a beauty pageant, is the ingenue. Yeah. They love to discover. And they discovered Jennifer Lawrence a couple of years ago with Silver Linings Playbook. They nominated her for the indie movie Winter's Bone. Then she has Silver Linings Playbook and The Hunger Games. She's a new star. And so they were able to embrace her. And then the next year she comes back with American Hustle in a supporting role and really dynamic. But she'd won the previous year for Silver Linings. So it was sort of like, okay, that's your one for a couple of years. And it's still only a couple of years on since she won. So I think she's going to have a hard time up against Brie Larson, who is so captivating in Room and just wows people. The only fly in the ointment is that she is absent for towards the end of the picture for a little bit. You miss her, but it just feels like with Brie Larson in Room that it's like, ooh, she's missing maybe one more scene to seal the deal. That's where I think she might be vulnerable. And she's a rising star. She's off making King Kong right now, so she's not on the ground doing that campaign.
And Jennifer Lawrence is not on the ground too.
Well,
Brie is coming to town here and there where she can, but we don't have these stars campaigning on the women's side.
Well, at the one end, the younger end, I think where you do have them campaigning is the more veteran actresses, and it's just really nice to see a whole slew of names being talked about that are AARP members. Lily Tomlin,
Maggie Smith.
Grandma, Maggie Smith and The Lady in the Van, Charlotte Rampling in 45 years. Patricia Clarkson in Learning to Drive. I mean, these are all women.
Blythe Danner, did you mention her?
Blythe Danner in I'll See You in My Dreams, the first screener that went out. Dame Helen Mirren in a Harvey Weinstein film from the spring that he's pushing like crazy, Woman in Gold, because he sees there might be an opening. How much do you think, I'm curious, when we can talk about all these different people in the mix right now, 10 or 12 different people, when the 5 nominees come out, do you think it's a done deal, or does the race start anew? Is it anyone's to win when the 5 nominees are revealed, or have people made up their minds already?
Chris?
It's a good question, because there's people we haven't even mentioned, like Cate Blanchett, and I still my hunch is
Rooney Mara ends up in lead.
That's what I'm saying. I think some of these places it's predetermined. Like she's on the SAG ballot in supporting. The Golden Globe committee ruled that she's a lead there. I don't know what they'll do with Critics' Choice, but my feeling is, because Oscar voters do what they want, I have a feeling they're going to put Rooney Mara and Cate Blanchett in to that lead category. That's what I'm predicting right now. And Rooney's another one. She was not projected by any of us to get in for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo that year, and so she's a past nominee. It's not like this is her first go-round.
And if they like the ingenue, if they like the hot chicks, we have 3 hot chicks here. We have Brie Larson, Rooney Mara, and Alicia Vikander. And they're all on, just huge names inspiring all kinds of awe in media these days. And they could all end up in lead. Of course, the presumption is that Rooney and Alicia would be in supporting for that, because that's where they're being campaigned. But as we know, they were bumped up to lead at the Globes. That screws up everything, or maybe not.
I think Alicia's going to get in supporting at the Oscars. Again, it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
I don't think her role is nearly as. I don't think it's nearly as cut and dry as it is, I think, with Rooney.
I mean, at one point, Chris, they referred to Alicia's character as the Danish girl. I mean, she could easily, she's the co-star of that picture, and she's been in a whole slew of other movies this year. Yeah, I mean, every other screener they pop in has Alicia Vikander in it. So
it's just my feeling. I think they're going to put her in supporting. And Rooney.
Chris, that's a really good way to do it. My feeling. Well, that settles that. Look, I have a feeling that Saoirse Ronan, past nominee, can get back in. She's been working it. They love her. We know that all the little weepy old ladies of Hollywood, including me, love Brooklyn. It's the great sentimental sappy movie of the year, but it's a very understated performance. Right?
Well, that was sort of to my point about the 5 nominees. Do you start afresh? And maybe, I mean, if we see critics groups splitting up the prizes, if there's no clear front runner, I mean, maybe over in Best Actor, if Leo's the clear front runner, if it's the perception that Room doesn't do as well as we're thinking it will in terms of nominations, I don't know. I mean, I think it could be turned into a very competitive race if Joy takes off at the box office. I would love that. That's my scenario, that Joy just explodes and she gets her. Back to Jennifer for a second. Sally Field reminds us that when they like you, they really, really like you at the Oscars, and there is a window period, a honeymoon period of where you can win to
Hilary Swank, Sean Penn won within 5-year spans. Tom Hanks won back-to-back, of course. So
Sally
Jennifer
Field
Lawrence
wins
won the
5
year
years.
of the first Hunger Games. This is the year of the last Hunger Games. Of course, she was nominated for another one of those Hunger Game years and lost for American Hustle. But still, I'm rooting for Jennifer, but even though she's still my number one for prediction, I believe, I'm conceding that Brie Larson's out front. But if Rooney or Alicia get in the lead, it's a different game here.
And the other thing is Jennifer is outspoken, but in a good way, about the gender pay inequity, the fact that she got paid.
Campaigning. She's not available to campaign because of her movie schedule. That's a problem here, too. If she was on the ground, I think she could work it.
The interesting thing here, just like we talked about on the men, I could totally, because Joy has been deemed a comedy by the Globes, I could see a Jennifer Lawrence, Brie Larson, both winning at the Globes, again, just confusing us like crazy.
Oh,
right, and that's what we saw for the guys last year when we had Michael Keaton and Eddie Redmayne, and that defined the Best Actor race last year as it moved on. Kind of fun.
And just, we're talking about campaigning. Campaigning to get the nominations, one thing, but don't forget, Oscar voting, the final voting doesn't happen until you're into February already.
Right,
so
it's a long way.
There's that big gap from the time of nominations until they actually get to log in and vote. So, a lot can happen, and that's what makes it fun. But
watch out, everybody. This year, I'm a Critics' Choice and a SAG voter. I'll screw up everything by throwing in my Weasley choices. Hey, we have not talked about Carey Mulligan, Suffragette, Emily Blunt, Sicario, Charlize Theron, Mad Max, Fury Road, Patricia Clarkson we did mention, and Maggie Smith. She's not well enough to campaign, or not agile enough to campaign in her years, but boy, she gives a flamboyant, over-the-top performance in Lady in the Van, which is quite a hoot.
And if she gets nominated, what will be great for her is the final season of Downton Abbey will start right around the time that Oscar nominations come out. So every Sunday night on PBS, she'll have an hour-long for your consideration ad.
That's right. She has a story arc in this final season, doesn't she?
Yeah, and she steals every scene she's in. She's won Emmys galore for this role. And it's been a heck of a long time. I mean, her last Oscar nomination was for another Julian Fellows who created Downton Abbey, did Gosford Park, and she had a supporting nomination there. So it'd be really wonderful to see her at least in the mix.
Paul, let's double back to Cate Blanchett. Are we underestimating her? She has won, as you reminded me earlier today, 3 Oscars in 11 years.
Two
Oscars in 11 years. And in other words, could she win 3? So
that's what makes it hard. The fact that it's such a short duration. We talked about Meryl Streep having to wait almost 30 years for number 3. Jack Nicholson, it was close to a quarter of a century. Katharine Hepburn, who Cate Blanchett played to win that first Oscar. I mean, she wins in the early 30s and has to wait until the late 60s to win numbers 2 and 3. So, if they thought Meryl Streep had 3 or 4
nominations, and she's really cool. She plays a lesbian, and
this is her film. She brought Todd Haynes to the picture, not the other way around. I mean, she optioned this story, so she was driving this engine, and she's very passionate about it. And I'm mindful of, we mentioned Richard Burton a while back, him losing his last Oscar bid for Equus to another Richard Dreyfuss, who had 2 pictures in the mix that year, The Goodbye Girl and Close Encounters. Not a lot of people maybe went to the theaters to see it, but Cate Blanchett has a very different role in that movie, Truth, where she plays the 60 Minutes producer, an American woman, works with Dan Rather, played by Robert Redford. They're going to watch that screener. They may not be voting for it, but boy, it's a chance to be reminded of that this woman can do anything.
And let's remind our viewers and listeners here that Sony Pictures Classics sent that screener to Academy members on the day that Carol opened in theaters nationwide, just to put the screws to Harvey. I think that's hilarious in terms of the dirty tricks campaigning that goes on for Oscars.
That's taking advantage of a moment. I don't think of that as dirty tricks. I think of that as
fun, just goosing Harvey. Come on.
You could have a Cate Blanchett double feature. Go to the picture in movies to see Carol, come home and watch Truth. That's what that was about.
Oh, okay.
But those Sony Pictures Classic, yeah, exactly. They've got Lady in the Van. I mean, they know what they're doing.
They've got Lily Hellman, Lily Tomlin. Oh, my old. And Grandma might be a little too slight for
Lily Tomlin.
the Oscars, but
yeah,
she could get in.
Yeah, well, right, and she's a TV Academy governor and very popular performer. Got nominated for an Emmy over Jane Fonda for Grace and Frankie. She is out there. It's a lovely little picture, written especially for her by Paul Weitz because he had such fun directing her in a movie a couple years ago called Admission. So it would be great. I think we're definitely going to see, Chris, don't you, at least one of these women of a certain age in the category?
I think so, and again, coming back to the Globes, I mean, several of the ones we've mentioned, Lily Tomlin, Maggie Smith, they're Jennifer Lawrence, they're all going to be eligible on the comedy side, so that gets a lot of the names in there that we've been talking about. The veteran that to me might get in, I think I've got her in my 5th slot right now, is Charlotte Rampling, who, Paul, you said that was one of your favorite films, and I've heard several people say that, never been Oscar nominated, and somebody that's really respected in the industry.
Yeah, yeah, and a film that'll play exceptionally well on screeners.
Yes, there is extraordinary love for that movie here in Hollywood. Extraordinary, and it is about an older couple facing the final years of their lives. It kind of reminds me of Amour in a way. They're not dying, Rampling and her husband, Tom Courtenay, but they are.
Oh, it's the opposite of that. My God, without spoiling anything, I mean, there's a sex scene.
Yeah, I mean, they're retired. Aren't they retired in the movie or something?
Yeah, but they're vibrant. I mean, it's
still vibrant. But the point is that they're dealing with old, their senior years, shall we say, yes. And they are, it's an emotionally, brazenly honest movie in the way that Amour was, and that really resonated with the Academy members. That was up for Best Picture. You do hear people gushing about 45 years in Charlotte Rampling, so I think she certainly can get in, and if she's the only veteran in that race, that could be interesting to see if she could possibly pull off an upset there. It has a really great finale. The movie does.
It's so beautifully modulated performance. I mean, I think the actors branch will respond to it because it's not a lot of fireworks. It's just really, really good acting. You sort of feel like you're eavesdropping on these people. It's very naturalistic, and it's exceptional work by both of them.
Final thoughts. We're going to end here for the acting awards. I'm running out of steam. We'll come back to supporting actor and actress another day. So let's wrap this up. Anybody any final thoughts on lead actor and actress?
I think it's Leo and Brie.
And I think we don't know anything until we see the nominations, and then we'll start all over again. I think that you've got some presumptive frontrunners, but boy, there's a lot of people that went into the Oscars that night. I mean, I think of Michael Keaton last year. He had his acceptance speech out when his category was announced. He still got it, and when we talk about supporting actor, we can reference the fact that maybe he can use some of that this year for Spotlight. So. And
it is amazing that he lost, considering his movie won Best Picture, and he did win the Globe and all that. It's like, wow, but boy, when SAG came and Eddie snatched the prize, the whole Derby changed. It was a great example of the race.
And a great example of Tom O'Neill's prognostication, because I've mentioned this story before. I'm the one that turns off the prediction center. I called Tom and said, "You are the only expert predicting Eddie Redmayne to win at SAG against Michael Keaton, who plays an actor. Are you sure?" And Tom said, "Yes." And half an hour after Eddie Redmayne won that SAG award, he was calling Tom O'Neill up to say, "Thank you for being the sole support." Because that's the thing. These actors and actresses, directors, writers, they come to Gold Derby, they look at those charts, they look at their arrows going up and down, they look at those graphs on the homepage, and there they go up, and then they come down, and then they, like Eddie Redmayne, and then, boy, our experts couldn't update their Oscar predictions fast enough after he won the SAG award. So, but Tom
Eddie
was the one.
Paul's not kidding. Eddie did call me that night, right after the SAG awards, and I said, or thought, I didn't say this to him, don't you have something better to do, like celebrate your win right now? But he said in the conversation, what's interesting, and to this point, if you ever wonder about Gold Derby's impact in the industry, Eddie is a good example of it. He was saying, well, he was watching, because early on the SAG Awards predictions, he had a few other votes. Michael Keaton was out front, but it was split. But one by one, they all abandoned him. And Eddie said, I was watching them all one by one ditch me, and you were the only one, Tom, and you were holding on. And he said, as we went into the ceremony, I thought that if Tom believes I can win, I think I can win. And it was startling to think that that we were having that impact on these very important people. But look, there's nothing like Gold Derby out there, and wherever we go,
That's right.
Chris here from Mississippi, and Chris from a distance had an idea of what Gold Derby's impact is in this town. But when he got here and he started working the parties and entering the rooms and meeting people who treat us like rock stars when they see us because they love the site so much, you got quite an education, didn't you, Chris?
Oh, I did. There was one famous, just talking about the charts, one famous director cornered me at a lunch one day and said, how much they enjoyed the site and all that. But then they said, how does it change on a given day? Like, how can I be up in the morning and down in the evening? And I had to explain how all the math worked.
Well, and that's because people watching these videos go and update by the hundreds and thousands their predictions. Because you know what? As much as we think we're the experts, we have 24 people every year that we feature because they do better than all of us. And it's the people watching, the people out there that make their predictions that are the real experts.
We're talking about you guys, the top 24, that if you get the top, are in the top 24 best scores at Gold Derby, you advance into a league to compete against us, the editors, and the experts. And if you think that doesn't matter, your predictions are, like everybody's predictions at Gold Derby, are factored into our overall racetrack odds and what goes up and down. And we're going to end on this note. Paul, you sat next to a film studio president the other day who told you that, I'm not even going to give away the gender, said that this person checks our predictions how many times a day?
Oh, well into the double digits. I mean, this is. I think a lot of our traffic, we're a website, comes from people hitting refresh to see what as Chris said, to see if those red down arrows are going to turn into green up arrows. So, yeah, we're terrorizing Hollywood.
There was another film studio president who told me the other day that he said that I check it at least 10 times a day. So that said, all of you guys watching this, go out. Update your predictions, send those arrows up and down now that we've made you smarter or confused you more, and we will be back soon to talk about the supporting actress races. In the meantime, here at Gold Derby, giddy up, Derbyite.